The room was still. Not a whisper, not a stir. Time itself seemed to have paused as Marcus Thorne, the new CEO of Callister and Row, stood silently, his eyes fixed on an architectural blueprint that bore no signature. His gaze swept the room with razor-sharp focus. "Bring me the real architect now," he commanded. Then the unthinkable happened. The janitor, the man everyone had ignored for years, slowly raised his hand. A chill ran through the spine of every executive present. Humiliation, they knew, would surely precede any glory in this unfolding drama. This was the story no one dared to tell until now. Watch till the end to uncover the remarkable journey of the unseen janitor and how one audacious moment changed everything. Dallas was just stirring awake as the mirrored elevator doors opened onto the 34th floor of Callister and Row, one of the most prestigious architecture firms in the country. High heels tapped against marble. Ties were adjusted in a frantic rush. Word had already spread like wildfire. The new CEO was here. Not just any CEO. Marcus Thorne, former military officer, self-made real estate mogul, a man known for firing entire departments with a 3-line email. He tolerated no weakness and detested mediocrity. He strode through the main hallway like a general inspecting a battlefield. The boardroom was packed, executives already lined up, their smiles tight and strained. Without a word of greeting, Marcus opened a leather case and pulled out a single sheet, laying it on the glass table. It was a design, breathtakingly modern, bold, and perfect. A blueprint for a sustainable innovation center, combining art with functionality in a way that stunned the room. He ran a finger along its lines as if touching a relic, then looked up, his voice like ice. "This wasn't done by any of you, was it?" No one answered. The silence was thick, heavy, like wet cement setting. "Find me who did this now. I don't want guesses or interns playing around. I want the real architect." 5 minutes. The team exchanged panicked glances. One director cleared his throat. A female executive bit her lip. Another manager began checking his phone, feigning disinterest. And then, from the back of the room, came the faintest sound. A broom sliding across the polished floor. All heads turned. A man in a navy blue janitor's uniform stood still, wearing rubber gloves and a headband. His eyes were calm. Too calm. He stopped sweeping, stood tall, and slowly, deliberately, raised his hand. "I did it," he said, his voice clear. "I'm the one who designed that." The silence that followed the janitor's words was deafening. The executives looked at each other as if part of a collective hallucination. The man who claimed credit for the blueprint was the same man who cleaned the windows, scrubbed the restrooms, and mopped the office floors every night. The same one who arrived before anyone else, left after everyone was gone, and never asked for anything. They didn't even know his name. Marcus stared at him as if trying to solve a riddle that didn't compute. He walked over slowly, holding the design sheet, and held it up in front of the janitor's face. These curves, the light treatment, this airflow through the solar glass panels. He narrowed his eyes. "You designed this?" The janitor nodded without hesitation. "Every line?" A manager blurted out from the far end of the table. "This has to be a joke. Maybe he saw it online. This kind of concept doesn't just come from someone pushing a mop." "I didn't copy anything," he replied, his tone calm but direct. "I designed it myself. I worked on it during my night shifts after everyone had gone home. I used old sketch paper from the storage closet and drew it by hand. Then I scanned and printed it." Bethany Price, the firm's HR director, folded her arms, trying to mask her disbelief. "With all due respect, you're a janitor. You don't have the credentials for something like this." "I do," the man replied, looking directly at her. "You just never asked." Marcus turned to the rest of the room. "None of you knew about this?" Awkward silence. A young analyst finally muttered. He hangs out on the design floor at night. We've seen random sketches left on the whiteboards. We thought it was, I don't know, doodling." Marcus looked back at him. "What's your name?" He slowly pulled off one of his gloves. as if revealing part of himself for the first time. Elijah Hayes, architecture graduate from MIT. And yes, I created that design. His name hit the room like an explosion. One director choked on his coffee. Bethany went pale. But Marcus didn't move. He just stared at Elijah as if he'd finally found what he was looking for. "Take a seat," he said, motioning to the central chair at the table. "I want to hear everything." As Elijah sat down for the first time, someone at that company finally listened to him. Elijah sat slowly, not out of hesitation, but with the steady grace of someone crossing a forbidden line. The room buzzed with an invisible tension. Nobody typed, no phones buzzed. Even the receptionist behind the glass wall paused mid-keystroke when she saw Elijah sitting at the head of the table. Marcus leaned forward, hands clasped, eyes locked on him. "I want to understand something. How does someone with your background end up here?" Elijah inhaled deeply. "No dramatics, just truth. After I lost my daughter in a car accident, I couldn't go back to being who I was," he said quietly. "She was 6 years old. Her name was Lauren. At the time, I had a private firm, big contracts, life was stable. Then she was gone and I was gone with her. I sold everything. I just wanted silence." A quiet gasp rippled through the room. He looked up again. His voice didn't shake, and it didn't have to. "Working here as a janitor gave me space to survive. I didn't have to talk to anyone or explain why I wasn't the bright architect anymore. But the love for architecture never left. It just got quieter." Bethany jumped in again, trying to find ground. "But why didn't you mention your degree during hiring? We had a process." Elijah's answer cut through like glass. "I filled everything out honestly, but no one reads the resumes of cleaning staff. You skimmed, stamped, and moved on." Marcus looked around. His expression hadn't changed, but something deep beneath it had. "You created this project as a personal exercise?" "No," Elijah said. "It was a real proposal. I studied the internal designs that got rejected and reimagined them using the flaws I saw. I printed it anonymously to see if it would be judged for its quality, not its author." He cracked a small, tight smile. "Well, it spoke." He stood, walking toward the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city, then turned back to the room. "Let's get something clear. Elijah, you're no longer on the janitorial staff. As of today, you're officially part of the design team. And as for the rest of you, you've just been outclassed by someone who didn't even have a seat at this table." It hit like a gavel. Some tried to object. No words came because the truth was sitting right in front of them in the form of a man they had never truly seen. And for the first time in a long time, Elijah smiled. That morning, the story traveled fast across the floors of Callister and Row. Whispers turned into questions. "Did you hear the janitor? Seriously, he designed that?" But what nobody knew was how it truly happened. That project, the one that had stunned the CEO, hadn't accidentally landed on his desk. Elijah had left it there on purpose, not for credit but to test something deeper. Not just his skills, but whether this company could recognize genius without a title. The night before, after everyone had gone home, Elijah stayed behind on the 32nd floor, the old brainstorming lounge, where junior teams used to joke about him sneaking in to clean too early. The overhead lights flickered. The walls were stained with half-erased ideas. He sat alone at the corner table, an untouched cup of coffee beside him. He laid the plans out, smoothed the pages. They were the best work he had created since Lauren died. Then he slipped the design into a clean folder. No name, no logo, and left it on the 34th floor. If it was good enough, it would speak. If not, no one would ever know it was his. But he never expected what would happen next. Fast forward to the moment. The CEO had just slammed his hand on the table. "I want the architect, the real one, now." Everyone else froze, avoiding eye contact. And from the back of the room came the soft sound of a janitor's cart. Elijah stopped pushing, took a deep breath, and raised his hand. At first, no one understood. A few scoffed nervously. Some thought it was a joke. But his hand stayed up, steady and certain. Marcus stared, then walked toward him again. "You're saying this is yours?" "Yes," he said. I've been invisible for a long time, but that design, it's everything I am. Everything you've never seen. Marcus didn't laugh. He didn't mock him. He looked at him like a man recognizing something he didn't know he was missing. And right then, the power dynamic shifted. His name was on everyone's lips now. Elijah Hayes. Some rushed to look him up online. Others just whispered, trying to remember if they'd ever really looked him in the eyes. But nobody knew who he truly was. As Marcus asked him to walk through the technical details of the project, something else started to unfold. Because before the specs, Elijah shared his story. I was born in Fort Worth, Texas. My dad was a carpenter. Mom worked in elder care. I grew up around sawdust and work boots. My dad used to say, everything worth building starts with a strong foundation, even people. He paused briefly, then continued. By 14, I was sketching buildings in my school notebooks. At 17, I earned a full scholarship to MIT. I thought it was my dream coming true. But even there, I learned that being good wasn't enough. I had to be flawless. And even then, I was still treated like an exception. His voice didn't crack. It stayed strong but carried decades of pressure. I graduated with top honors, won awards, opened my own firm, got a few contracts, but every time I walked into a boardroom, they asked if I was the assistant, not the architect. A few eyes dropped to the table. Nobody could deny it. They'd all made the same assumptions. Then came the weight of it all. My daughter Lauren was my light, 6 years old. She loved buildings. I'd take her to sites, let her sketch beside me. One day I was sick. She rode along with my former business partner to a location. He ran a red light. There was an accident. She died instantly. He survived. A sharp inhale from someone in the back. Elijah let the words breathe. After that, I disappeared. I couldn't stand the sight of blueprints. Couldn't think, couldn't speak. I took this janitor job because it let me be invisible. But I never stopped drawing. At night alone, quietly, like I was still showing my daughter the buildings I dreamed of. Marcus sat still, not blinking. That's why this building looks different. Because it came from grief, from memory, from love. One executive muttered under his breath, Jesus. And that's when Marcus pulled something from a folder. This is your formal offer, he said. Lead architect, full control of the Houston project. But before he could accept, Bethany leaned in. Wait, you're really going to put him in charge of a multimillion-dollar design? Marcus turned to her, his voice cutting through the air like a scalpel. No, I'm putting the architect in charge. The one you in this entire company ignored for 5 years. Elijah didn't gloat. He just smiled softly, like someone finally stepping into his own skin. That night, Elijah went home later than usual. His apartment in South Dallas was small, worn around the edges, but clean and peaceful. A quiet sanctuary, not filled with things, but with survival. He placed his janitor's uniform over the back of a kitchen chair, then sat at the edge of his bed, and from under the wardrobe, he pulled out a weathered cardboard box. Inside it were the remains of a life most people would never guess belonged to him. MIT degree, framed awards, letters of recommendation from top architects, and folded neatly at the very top, a child's crayon drawing, a building shaped like a flower with a note scribbled in pink pencil. Mommy, I want to live in something you design. Lauren. Elijah touched the paper gently, smiling through tears. He picked up a dusty photo frame hidden behind books on his shelf. Lauren's beaming face filled it. Tiny braids, denim overalls, holding a safety helmet twice his size. That photo was Elijah's fuel. The thing that kept him drawing through the grief, through the nights when even breathing felt impossible. But the world hadn't just taken his daughter. It had erased Elijah, too. After the accident, the headlines barely mentioned him. The man responsible, his former business partner, Brian Bloom, walked away free. He took his contacts, his designs, his reputation. He even used one of his unreleased concepts to launch a new firm that won city contracts. Elijah didn't fight it. He was too broken. I vanished, he whispered to himself, staring at the photo. Because this world doesn't let men like me start over. Not twice. And yet, something had shifted. That morning, meeting with Marcus, the recognition, the room that had finally seen him, and more than that, the unspoken promise he made to Lauren. Elijah opened his old sketchbook, the one he kept hidden. He flipped past half-finished ideas until he landed on a blank page. With a pencil, he drew a new building, a flower rising from concrete. At the top of the page, he wrote, "For all the voices that were silenced before they could be heard." The next morning, he walked back into Callister and Row, not with a mop, but with purpose. And when he entered the design floor wearing his new badge that read, Creative Consultant, people didn't know whether to stare, smile, or hide. Because now Elijah wasn't just the man they overlooked. He was the truth they could no longer ignore. That Tuesday, every senior designer at Callister and Row was summoned to the top-floor conference room. The energy was thick. Something was coming. Marcus stood at the front, arms crossed, facing the room of architects and project leads. And next to him, seated calmly with nothing but a worn leather sketch pad in his hand, was Elijah. This time, no uniform, just a clean black blouse, hair pulled back. No need for armor. He had become one. Some scoffed quietly. Others exchanged doubtful glances until Marcus finally spoke. "You've all had weeks to submit designs for the Houston Innovation Center. So far, I've seen nothing but half-baked concepts and recycled thinking." He looked around the room. "So here's what we're going to do. You each get 60 minutes. No teams, no software, just brains, vision, and paper. The challenge: create a space that merges sustainability, public accessibility, and architectural boldness inside a highly restricted urban zone." Then, turning to Bethany, who still sat stiffly in the back, he added, "And yes, Elijah will participate." Whispers turned to audible pushback. "Seriously, he's not even in our division. This is ridiculous." But Marcus didn't flinch. Anyone who's afraid to compete with raw talent is welcome to hand in their badge now. The room quieted. Elijah opened his sketch pad. No laptop, no internet, no noise. He closed his eyes for a moment and then started to draw. His pencil glided with fluid confidence. While others scrambled for rulers and reference books, Elijah's design flowed as if it had always existed inside him, waiting for this exact moment. Time ticked away. Some walked behind him to peek, trying to steal ideas. Some whispered that his method was outdated, too hands-on. But when the hour ended and Marcus asked him to present first, no one was ready for what they saw. He walked to the board and pinned up his drawing. A public research center with elevated gardens, solar reflective glass, natural ventilation corridors, and a central atrium shaped like an open flower, inspired by my daughter's drawing. Elijah said, "It's not just a building, it's a healing space, a place where communities feel welcome, not boxed out." Silence. Marcus scanned the room. Anyone here have something more original, more visionary, more human? No one spoke, not even Bethany. The silence that followed Elijah's presentation wasn't from disbelief anymore. It was from discomfort. People in that room, people with six-figure salaries and framed degrees, were forced to confront a truth they didn't want to admit. They had been outclassed not by a rival, but by someone they never considered competition. Bethany, still seated in the back, crossed her arms tightly, her voice dripping with passive aggression. "It's a nice concept, sure, but it's not practical. A good sketch doesn't mean it's structurally sound." Marcus turned to her slowly. "You're saying the most visionary design I've seen in 5 years needs your approval to matter?" She stammered. "I'm saying we need to follow protocol." He stepped closer. "No, you're saying you still can't accept that you overlooked a genius. You filed his resume, ignored his credentials, and you let him clean our offices while he quietly outdesigned every architect in this building." The room froze. Nobody came to Bethany's defense because deep down, they were all part of it. All guilty of looking past Elijah, of seeing a mop instead of a mind. Marcus walked to the head of the room and placed a formal folder on the table. "This is Elijah's promotion paperwork. He's now the lead designer for the Houston project." Elijah remained seated. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just existed fully in the space they told him wasn't his. Bethany pushed back one last time. So what? Now we're hiring janitors to run creative departments? What's next? Letting the interns build the foundations. The room turned to Elijah. He looked Bethany in the eye, then calmly said, "Maybe the next step is teaching executives how to see below their own ceilings." The line hit hard. Even Marcus let out the slightest grin. He turned back to Bethany. "Bethany, thank you for your service, but your view of leadership doesn't fit the future we're building. You're dismissed. Effective immediately." Bethany's jaw dropped, but she knew the room had shifted and she was no longer in control. As she walked out, Elijah stood, and for the first time, he walked through that floor, not to scrub its corners, but to reshape its future. 2 days later, Elijah was called to the firm's private boardroom. It was all glass and skyline, the kind of space he'd only ever cleaned, never been invited into. Marcus stood waiting, a sleek folder in his hand with Elijah's name printed in gold lettering. "The board approved your promotion," he said. "As of now, you're officially Senior Creative Director for the Houston Initiative. You'll be managing a team of over 50. Elijah took a breath, looked out at the Dallas skyline, and then shook his head slightly. "I accept, but I have one condition." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." Elijah placed his own folder on the table. Nothing fancy. Inside were portfolios, notes, names. "I want to build my own team, not just the usual suspects. I want people like me, people who never got the chance because they didn't come from the right school or wear the right clothes." Marcus listened, intrigued. "You're talking about recruiting outside the system?" "No," Elijah said. "I'm talking about breaking the system open. There's a man in South Houston designing public playgrounds by hand, but he's never had a formal interview. There's a Haitian immigrant in East Austin with an accredited architecture degree, but he's hauling cement on construction sites. There's a teen in North Dallas who rebuilt his entire block's community garden with no funding, no recognition, just raw vision." He looked Marcus in the eye. "I want them because the future shouldn't be built by people who only know the top floor. It should be built by those who understand the foundation." Marcus took a moment, then slowly closed the gold-lettered folder. "All right, let's build it your way." And with that handshake, Elijah didn't just accept a title. He rewrote the rules. The following week, Callister and Row introduced a brand new design division. The team wore simple clothes, carried backpacks, not briefcases, but their work was revolutionary. And every single badge they wore carried the same symbol at the bottom: Root Project. Talent grows here. Months later, the crowd gathered in downtown Houston. Reporters, architects, politicians, students, and people you don't usually see at ribbon-cutting ceremonies. Sanitation workers, cafeteria cooks, night shift nurses, the ones who clean up after the speeches. But today they were front row, because this wasn't just another corporate unveiling. This building meant something. A center for innovation and public access. A space designed to be used, not just admired. A building that didn't look like it was dropped onto the community from above, but like it had grown from the ground up. On the stage, Marcus stood with a mic in hand. "When I first saw the blueprint for this place, I thought it was impossible. Then I met the person who designed it, and I realized what was really impossible was continuing to pretend that talent only looks one way." He turned toward the side of the stage. "Please welcome our lead architect, founder of the Root Project, Elijah Hayes." Applause erupted, loud, long, real. Elijah stepped up slowly. He wore a simple navy blue suit, hair pulled back, a small white flower pinned to his lapel, just like the ones Lauren used to draw. He took the mic, paused, and then began. "I spent years cleaning the floors of this industry, but the hardest part wasn't the mop. It was being unseen. Every day, walking through a building I dreamed of designing, knowing no one saw me. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. This center is for my daughter Lauren. She believed in me even when I didn't. She once told me she wanted to live in something I designed. And now she does." Elijah looked out across the community members who had gathered. Mothers holding children, local artists, school teachers, dreamers, fighters. This isn't just architecture. This is redemption. This is a place that says, we see you. We value you. We built this for and with you. When he stepped down from the stage, he didn't go to the VIP tent. He walked straight to the Root Project team, architects from every background, every neighborhood. And before entering the building, he took off his badge, turned it over and wrote in pen, "For Lauren, we built this together." That day, a new blueprint was born, not for buildings but for what's possible.